Hey, this is Liam. So in this video we're going to have a look at the why. You've probably been told by everybody from all angles, including me and everything you read on freelancelift.com and on the book, that you should specialise in on an audience. But why? Well, I've got three main reasons, and I'm sure it'll make it clear coming off the back of that. But first I want to give you a little bit of background into my story just so that you can see how that aligns with this. My first time around as a freelancer, I was a designer that designed for anybody. Like a waiter, I served anybody with money. And what I found was it was quite tricky to get my voice out there. Nobody knew who I was, and it made it difficult to stand out from the crowd. But my second time around as a freelancer, that all changed because I focused on the music industry, something that I had a passion about, I was involved in, and I knew that industry entirely. I was a web designer, but it was for bands, record labels, and artists. A really small area with a smaller pool of customer and a much higher likelihood of making the sale. It all falls around three areas though. The first of which being it's easier to go out and find them, you know? It's easier to go out and attract their attention because guess what? You know exactly where they are. If they are musicians, then you can be sure that they're on musician blogs, they're following musician people on Twitter and on Facebook. You can find them in communities that house that kind of people and that kind of environment. So the more specific you are about your dream client, the more likely it is that you'll be able to go and find them. If you think about it from a marketer's perspective, and when you go out and actively go and try and find these people, it's better to have a smaller subset of an audience rather than just my audience is the internet. So that's the first one. It's easier to find them, to demand their attention, and just to be a blip on their radar. The second one then, it's easier to explain your services because you understand what their needs are, what their desires are, what their beliefs are, what their fears are. You understand it in their worldview, it makes it much easier to explain that to them and then get them to build that desire in your service. If you can explain that, yeah, I understand that you're coming to me as a result of this particular business problem, and you can tie that back to your service, show them how you've done it for other people in the past in a language that they understand, then you're going to make it much easier to make that sale. Whereas if you're quite generic and the problem that you're solving is, in the case of a web designer, I can make you a website, then there are several reasons that somebody would go and buy a website. So what you want to do is find a specialist audience in order that you can understand for their specific scenario, their specific situation and worldview, why might they go to market and how can your services align with that. And then the third one is it makes it easier to justify your cost versus their return. Remember, this is a narrower audience that you've had time to understand, get to know, and research. So you understand what their business model is, how much they're currently making, and how much your service will make an impact on that by saving them time, by saving them money, by making them more money. If you can understand all of that and put together a value argument, then you're going to be in a much better position to convince them to buy. So what's the next step then? How do you go about actually finding this specialist audience? Well, the other videos in this course will help you get to that point, but it comes down to three areas. First one is ideation, second one is qualification, and then because I couldn't think of another word that ended in T-I-O-N, decision making. Three areas. Ideation, finding out loads of ideas and making them right for you. Qualification, looking at some data, looking at some common sense metrics to say, okay, which one's going to be right for me? And the third one is just making the call. It's not too difficult, doesn't need to be. This course is relatively short for a reason, but it really will help you get more focus, get better clients that ultimately pay a little bit more. So let's get straight into it and let's do it.